Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SCA's 48th monthly Zoom presentation. We have now completed 4 years of monthly SCA Zoom presentations with no end in sight. My name is Brian Gallagher, and I'm the president of the Society for Commercial Archaeology. I will be your host tonight. We welcome all our guests and any new people we have with us tonight. We're happy you took the time out of your spring evening to watch an SCA presentation. I hope you enjoy the show. And for anybody watching the recording of this episode of the SCA's monthly presentations who's not a member of the SCA, we earnestly ask you to consider joining. Funding for the various activities of the SCA comes almost exclusively from our membership. Just visit our website at www.sca-roadside.org and follow the links. Now I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's presentation. To mark the 25th anniversary of his book, Palm Springs Weekend, Andrew Danish will discuss how the book helped transform the perception of the desert town from a backwater to the center of international modernism it is today. The talk includes an overview of the local architects, Palm Springs neighborhoods, residential and commercial images from the book, plus hotels, celebrity homes, country clubs, trailer parks, vintage signage, and a discussion of the meteoric rise of Modernist Week. And I'm also told by Andrew today that he has a section on roadside attractions as well, if we have time to get to it. Andrew Danish has worked extensively with Stanford University and has art directed numerous magazines. He now manages Danish Modern Studio in Oakland, California, specializing in art direction, graphic design, and photography. His book, Palm Springs Weekend, co-authored with Alan Hess and published by Chronicle Books in 2001, has sold out 4 print runs. So Andrew, without further ado, I'd like to ask you to start your presentation, and we'll look forward to seeing it.
Welcome, everybody, and thanks, Brian, for this. I do want to introduce Alan Hess, who's on. Are you muted still?
I am unmuted.
There you are.
Okay.
Just wanted to welcome you. Alan wrote the book, did a lot of the research for it, and I designed it and put it together. And I want to start off by showing a preview of the movie Palm Springs Weekend, which is, of course, what we took the title from. So I just wanted to, sort of set the flavor for this, and it's not very PC by today's standards, but it's campy and fun, and let's look at that now.
In the springtime, the swallows fly to Capistrano, bees head for the flowers, and kids here in Southern California take off for Palm Springs. It seems to be some kind of a primitive instinctual urge. We're conducting a little man in the sun survey to learn something about this peculiar sociological phenomenon. Tell me, sir, why do 1 million kids suddenly jam into Palm Springs on this particular weekend?
Well, I can't speak for the others, but being a pre-med student on a basketball scholarship, I need a rest come spring vacation. I don't know if Palm Springs is the best place to get a rest, but it's great for getting girls.
Miss, perhaps you could tell me why everybody comes to Palm Springs.
Gee, this is where all the fun is.
And all the girls.
Excuse me, sir. We're trying to find out why this big influx of young people to Palm Springs.
Well, I don't know. I just came out here to stretch out and take it easy. You see? Nothing but girls. Girls. Come, child. Let's not be naive. I can testify that this resort compares favorably with the French Riviera in every department. Palm Springs is where it swings.
This is where the kids go when they get out.
Way out. Live young when all your dreams are so shiny and new. Let loose. Do all the swinging things you want to do. Climb up Love's ladder to the highest rung. Take that magic carpet ride. Live young.
Word of honor, you got it. Okay, come up behind me and make out like like you're going to strangle me. Okay.
Biological urges, you know.
Would you want the girl you expect to marry to indulge in her biological urges too? In the meantime, you're not adverse to the experiences yourself.
Hey, look, I won't be an MD for another 7 years. That's a long time to hold hands.
All our interviews seem to lead to one inescapable conclusion. The boys come for girls, and the girls come for boys. And when they get together, man, it's wild.
The weekend of wow.
Sure, yeah. I was just going to say that the project was Andrew's idea, and he came to me, and I knew a little bit about Palm Springs at that time, but I had no idea exactly what the riches in terms of architecture was there. When I was in architecture school, the only buildings in Palm Springs that were known outside of the Coachella Valley were the Kaufman House by Richard Neutra and maybe the Elrod House by John Lautner. That was it. Nobody knew who Albert Frey was or William Cody or any of the other architects. And so it was a real surprise to me when I started to get into this research and realize what was there. There's still more to be researched and discovered. There's a great researcher, historian, Luke Leuschner, who is doing work right now and is planning on publishing articles and books. I have a book on Palm Springs that's coming out next February, also called the Palm Springs School. And its purpose is to draw together all of this information and kind of make sense of it. How are all of these architects and buildings connected? And as I said, if anybody wants to get into it, there's still more. There are architects, interesting architects to be researched and fitted into this bigger picture of what's going on, what has been going on in Palm Springs since the early 20th century, really. But it was, I mean, it's only 2 hours from Los Angeles, but nobody ever really thought that it was anything significant. So historians, writers, architects, they may have gone out there to enjoy the sun, but that was it. They didn't look at the art. But that actually is what helped save the buildings. Palm Springs was kind of cocooned from the mid-century into the, around 2000 or so. And so all these buildings just kind of sat there in the sun and were ready to be rediscovered and restored really over the last 20 years or so, which is an interesting thing that, benign neglect does have its advantages for buildings in places like this.
So, of course, you saw the clip, Palm Springs Weekend from the movie 1963. And I just thought that, it would sort of set the tone for this talk because a lot of these buildings were built around that era. So I started going there in the late 80s. It was a very sleepy town. It just looked like it was waiting to be reinvigorated. And Alan and I never got a chance to do a second edition for this book. So I kind of consider this talk to be our second edition. And most of this is new material. I really didn't shoot anything from the book. There's just always so much new stuff to discover. So I know, Alan, you talked about this a little bit, but since the book came out, these are all the new books that have come out about Palm Springs. There's just been a profusion of books. If you Google Palm Springs on Amazon, you get over 1,000 results now, guidebooks, notebooks, travel guides, restaurants, coloring books, everything. And, luckily there have been a lot of books about the architects that we talked about, which is a good thing. Sometimes more than one book. And there's also been some some esoteric books that have come out since then too. Palm Springs Dogs, Midnight Modern at the top left is about photographs that are just shot at midnight on with a full moon. And kind of my favorite one, Screw This, I'm Moving to Palm Springs. So I did want to give a plug to Alan because Alan was very inspirational in me photographing and learning about architecture. His book on Googie 50s coffee shop architecture came out in 1985, and it kind of gave credence and validity to the kind of architecture I was always photographing, and coined the phrase Googie, which you can see in the background, which was an actual coffee shop in LA. Another book which was very influential for me was Albert Frey's book that came out in 1990 by Joe Rosa. I started photographing everything that Frey had done in Palm Springs, and this was back before Google Maps. It was very hard to find all these things, but all these pages were dog-eared and highlighted, and did the best to find all these buildings. But I have to say the real catalyst for what really got this book started was this New Yorker article back in 1998. It was a California issue, and I was kind of intrigued as to what New York thought about California at the time. And there was a 10-page essay in this magazine that just really struck me. It was shot by a photographer named Robert Polidori, international photographer that did books on Russia and Cuba. And he had a very casual approach to his photography. It's something that we call drive-by shooting, like where you literally hang out the window and take a picture. And the image in the lower left really struck me too, that they would devote that much space to just shrubbery. And I just kind of thought that all these kind of photographs that I was shooting, were important, and a light bulb went off that there could be something more there. So I do want to give some credit to what I consider the pioneers of Palm Springs that I met early on in the 90s. Jim Moore, who's the creative director of GQ, bought his house in the North End in 1993. April Greiman and Michael Rotondi redid Miracle Manor, the place in the middle, back in 97. And Jay and Michelle Naylor moved to the desert in 1997, and now they have the Shag store on Palm Canyon Drive. And also Courtney Newman, I met early, and he introduced me to a lot of people. He has a resale shop for furniture and modern objects on Palm Canyon Drive, and it's now his 25th anniversary. So I actually met Jay because we were bidding on postcards on eBay, and we're driving the prices up. So that's kind of how we became friends. And just a little orientation as to, the cities in Palm Springs. It's not just one city, it's the whole Coachella Valley. So just to orient you, it starts at the northwest with Desert Hot Springs and goes all the way down to Coachella, where the Coachella Music Festival now takes place. But we're mostly talking about Palm Springs. And Palm Springs also has lots of different neighborhoods, and you can see all these listed here. If you want to learn more about that, I would just Google it. But starting out with a very brief history of early Palm Springs houses. This is the first house in Palm Springs area. It was actually down in Coachella, but it goes way back to 1922. Probably the most prolific architect in Palm Springs was Albert Frey. Albert came to the desert to design the Luminaire House, which was actually moved to Palm Springs. This is the Luminaire House from New York. It was set up for an expo in New York City back in 1931, and we're very lucky to have it back in Palm Springs now. And the color photo at the top is how it was lit up for Modernism Week. So this is a real success story. Another Albert Frey building is the Coker Sampson building, which dates back to 1935. This is still standing on Palm Canyon Drive, but it's now sandwiched between other buildings. But, you know, look how alone it was in the desert landscaping back then. Albert Frey's first house started in 1940. He did a lot of additions onto this. He added a pool. He added these concrete lounge chairs, which actually have are built into the concrete. And he this photograph by Schulman of how it looked in the desert all by itself. This 1953 edition of his bedroom, you can see there's a couple more shots and you can see what the inside looks like. He also designed this incredible hanging table to eliminate the legs. And there's currently a Frey exhibit at the Palm Springs Museum right now at the Architecture and Design Museum. So if anybody's in the area, it's definitely worth a look.
Andrew, just before you go on, could you turn your camera on so we can see your smiling face as you
sure.
give us the commentary?
Yeah, for some reason,
better.
I'm having trouble with my mouse. It's just not allowing me to.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, just carry on.
I can figure out how to do that. I will.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Andrew, if I could just add here,
yeah.
This is the addition that Frey did to his original house. And I think it's notable that at this point, he is veering away from his Corbusian training. The desert has affected him in an inspired way, I think. And the desert, the roadside, the tourism industry, all of that, the cars are definitely influencing him at least as much as his 1 year with Le Corbusier.
Right. There's another shot of the interior of his house. He also designed a hanging staircase. It's just pretty incredible. Suspended by aluminum rods. His pool was an indoor-outdoor pool. So the pool came from the outside right inside his house. There you can see at the bottom. And you'll see another example of him doing that later on. So then getting away from his own house, this is just an incredible building. He did an addition to the Racket Club bungalows in 1945. And it was a private pool. He also did Raymond Loewy's house, the industrial designer, in 1946. And you can see some of the same curved features that he did in his own house and in the front there. He also designed the Avanti at this house. So somebody mentioned the Avanti early on in the first slide, and you know that's something that he did in Palm Springs. And you can see here another example of this indoor-outdoor pool area. So the photo at the bottom left, you know, those doors slide open. The rock is actually on the inside of the house, like you can see on the right. And that's his family playing in the pool in the center. So he really did a lot to bring the outside elements, like the indoor-outdoor, blurred together. Another one of his major projects was the Palm Springs City Hall. This was an effort between multiple architects, but led by Frey. And there are a lot of circular elements in this complex, including these metal brise soleil that you see on the right. It's another Schulman photograph. But these circular elements continued on the inside as well. You know, the entryway, the people or the city has a round canopy, and then the void where the palm trees stick through at the entranceway as well. The Cree House is on a perch of a mountain, so it's got a cantilever carport. And again, his use of materials, the corrugated panels and the use of color, in this case, the yellow and the sage green. He often incorporated that into his buildings. And then Frey built the second house. The first house was unfortunately demolished. But this is his second house, and he built this on what was really called an unbuildable hillside. But really, Frey loved these kind of challenges. And this incorporated a rock into the house itself. It was said to heat up his home at night. And you can see here the rock protruding into his bedroom. He did will this house to the Palm Springs Museum when he passed away, so it is open for tours if you come and visit. Another famous building in Palm Springs opened as the Tramway gas station in 1964. It's at the base of the road which leads up to the tram in the mountain. And it's famous for his paraboloid roof line. I always get that wrong. And it's also iconic because it's the first modern building that you see when you drive in from LA. It was saved from demolition in 1997 by two San Franciscans who restored it as the Montana St. Martin Outdoor Sculpture Gallery, and now it's the Palm Springs Visitor Center. William Cody is known for his elegance, and he worked with other architects as well, but you can see in this photo the Palm Springs Spa, which was just an amazing building from 1961. Like City Hall, he worked with other architects on this, with Wexler, Harrison, and Koenig. And it had just this stunning diagonal entranceway at the intersection of two streets with sculptural elements throughout and a really cool sign out front. Inside, you'll see a beautiful pool in the courtyard. The top rendering on the right is an unbuilt plan for the spa, but the bottom is the actual plan that was built. And you can see how the canopy goes straight through on a diagonal through the entire complex. Some details of the inside, the beauty salon. There were rock walls, plants, sculptures throughout the whole place. And the sculpture at the bottom is a close-up of one by John Mason that was on the exterior. Also had a 3-story hotel attached to it with another pool and the porte cochere on the left. But I hope you notice that I've been speaking in the past tense because there was a D-Day in Palm Springs, September 3rd, 2014, when it was demolished very unceremoniously and secretly by the Agua Caliente band of Indians, which owned the land. And it would be almost 10 years until anything was built in its place, unfortunately. And this is what's there today. So, you be the judge. I still have to look in the opposite direction when I drive on this street. It just kills me. Another Cody with another architect, with other architects. This is kind of the closest thing that Palm Springs has to Googie that's still standing with the swooping roof line. But there are some other examples of that, which we'll get to. But Cody is really known for his elegance. This is the Goldberg residence from 1962. Very flat, low ceilings, walls of glass, and a travertine wall. A few other examples just to show his variety. The Del Marcos Hotel in 1947, where we stayed when we shot the book. The Horizon Hotel, which is another very low, elegant project with separate bungalows, very popular with celebrities. The Jorgensen Mavis House in the Thunderbird Country Club in Rancho Mirage. And Huddle Springs, which is a restaurant, which is Googie, but unfortunately did not survive. Luckily, the rest of these did. Another architect, Donald Wexler. He is one of the major architects in Palm Springs as well. He did a bunch of houses that made out of steel. There's 7 steel houses on the north end of town. And shown here is sort of how they came together, I mean, it was a combined effort between Wexler and Richard Harrison, but U.S. Steel was the one who provided the steel for these. And it was kind of an experiment with early prefab. These buildings could be constructed in about 30 days. And the plan was to bring in affordable housing to Palm Springs by building an entire subdivision of nearly 40 of them, but only 7 were actually built. And here you can see some of the construction techniques. Many of these had folded plate roof lines and matching rock walls throughout. They were originally constructed cost between 13 and 17,000. The first one that was built recently sold for 1.7 million. So things have changed, and they're all listed on a National Registry of Historic Places. Wexler had told me when he was still alive that his personal achievement was designing the Palm Springs Airport, and echoing and aircraft taking off is the entrance to it. It's had a lot of additions since, but luckily this still remains. Actually, the terrazzo floors have recently been restored there. Some other homes that he did, the Florsheim House in 57, with his signature spider legs coming out, the Downer Shore residence from 64. This was sold to Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's now a rental. Another architect, E. Stewart Williams. This is a plan for the Palm Springs Art Museum that he did. The reflecting pools in the front were never realized, but today we have a statue of Marilyn Monroe, which is in its place, and I won't show you that. It's kind of a subject of contention. Williams did a lot of commercial properties. At the top is the Santa Fe Savings and Loan, which now houses the Palm Springs Architecture and Design Museum that I mentioned before, and a Schulman photograph of the art museum as it was built. Probably his most famous house is called Twin Palms, that he built for Frank Sinatra. It has a piano-shaped swimming pool, and it was his very first residential commission. Sinatra had asked for a Georgian-style home, you know, a very traditional home like he had in Beverly Hills. And Frank walked into his office in May of 1947, but wanted it completed by Christmas, so we could have a party there. Williams convinced him otherwise to build something modern. And the walkway at the top left casts shadows of a piano at high noon. Another image, California Savings and Loan, #1. There are 2 of these. Another beautiful Schulman shot with period cars from 1955. It was a drive-through structure. You could park in the back, and had a beautiful staircase. This building is now used as an event space. Another Coachella Valley Savings and Loan in 1960 has a striking example of Williams' commercial work with another sweeping staircase in the lobby. This still looks pretty much the same. The only change is that they built railings that were added for safety measures. And here's another photograph of that. Here you can see that, you know, it kind of sits on a little moat. So the building really looks like it's floating. And that's his sketch on the right. The Idris House in 1954 was wooden, and it's famous for its connection to the landscape, situated at the top of a hill. It commands a view of the entire Coachella Valley. And then the Alexander Construction Company is another, he's a builder. It's not actually an architect, but it was founded by George Alexander and his son, Robert. It's important because it's part of the Palm Springs fabric, much like the Eichlers are part of the California housing community. And this is one of the butterfly roof lines that is pretty common in the Twin Palms area. Palmer and Kreisel were architects that built for the Alexander Company. They did a lot of post and beam construction techniques. They worked together from 1954 to 1964, and all they produced over 20,000 residential units in Southern California and Vegas. Probably some other examples of the butterfly roofline, and these are pretty common in the Twin Palms area. Oh, I guess the slide was a little slow in developing. Probably their most best known residential project is called the House of Tomorrow, built for Robert Alexander of the Alexander Company in 1962. It later became more well known as the Elvis Honeymoon Hideaway, where Elvis and Priscilla stayed in 1967. Kreisel's original sketch for this is at the top, which is very space age. The house features round stepping stones that lead up to the entranceway over a small waterfall. And the circular theme continues on the inside, where a curved stone wall with built-in seating, along with a round fireplace. In the kitchen, the island is round. And on the bedrooms pictured at the right, where ironically, Lisa Marie Presley was born 9 months after their stay. This house was recently restored and sold for $5.65 million. Ocotillo Lodge was another major project for the firm, which featured another circular motif in the clubhouse and the pool. These are also Schulman shots. To emphasize the importance of Palm Springs restoration efforts, the original sign was recently restored, and that's shown in the bottom right. The other two images are vintage Schulman shots.
Andrew, the Ocotillo and many of their works in Palm Springs were really designed by William Kreisel, the partnership, Dan Palmer and William Kreisel. They've done quite a number of modern, mass-produced housing tracts all over Southern California, all the way down to San Diego. But Bob Alexander was a good friend of William Kreisel from USC. And so Kreisel and Alexander worked together on these projects primarily.
Great. Sandpiper was another project. This is in Palm Desert, but similar, but an even larger development. The plan is shown at the upper left, centered around an enormous pool, flanked by areas of lawn. And this is another beautiful Schulman shot on the right. Sandpiper used a technique of these textured breeze blocks that were incorporated into the design of the facades and also went into the houses themselves, accentuating the interplay between light and shadow. And these occur a lot in Palm Springs. Canyon View Estates was another development by Roy Fay at the south end of Palm Springs. And it recently enjoyed its 15 minutes of fame in the film Don't Worry, Darling, with Harry Styles and Florence Pugh. It continued working with these breeze blocks. It also featured raised roof lines and clear-story windows. And actually, the image to the right is not all that unusual. During Modernism Week, many houses have period cars in the driveways. They've become almost synonymous with home ownership in Palm Springs.
Just before you go on, Andrew, you got about 15 minutes left. Now, I don't want you to hurry, because we can break this into two presentations. So we had that little delay at the beginning. So if there's lots left over, we can have you back again for part two. So take your time, but you have about 15 minutes. Okay,
I'll see how far I get. Another house that Kreisel designed, you see a sketch at the top, the Tipper Grunt. Pod House is kind of a series of connected pavilions, and it's built right on the golf course. And this recently sold for 2.5. And we get to Hugh Capter. He was another local architect. His style is considered more like organic 70s. Um, this home is situated on a hillside. The Burgess house is on a hillside right below Albert Frey's second house. And this was sold in January of this year for 8.15 million. And here you can see how it was built on an outcrop. You can see Albert Frey's house. If you look closely at the picture on the right at the very top, that's his house sticking out on the hillside. And some of his other work that has a lot of sort of angles in it. The Impala Hotel, the building that was shown in the beginning with all the angles, that's an office building on the right. And, you know, he keeps working right up until 2016. He designed this house at the bottom. John Porter Clark, another local architect. This is his house for William Holden in the Deepwell area. Clark's own house that he designed was right near Albert Frey's first house. And that's what you see here. It was built in 1939, but still looks contemporary. And, you know, the car puts it in perspective. Clark worked with a lot of other architects. The William Holden House is here. The Weldwood Library, which is downtown, is here. Cabazon Library is on the right. And unfortunately, this is endangered right now. John Lautner, another prolific architect who really deserves a talk all of his own, designed this monumental house that's referred to as the Turtle for Bob Hope. Lautner dates back to 1947. His first project in Palm Springs was in Desert Hot Springs. This was a small hotel, very organic, on the site of 4 separately designed interlocking units of steel, wood, and glass. It was in pretty bad shape, but luckily restored in 2012. And then here's the Bob Hope House, 1979, built on top of a hill in the Southridge neighborhood. And you can see this from just about anywhere in the valley. It's a concrete shell. It's immense. It's 24,000 square feet, 10 bedrooms, 13 baths, and was built to hold 300 guests. Arthur Elrod was chief interior designer on the house. But Bob Hope never really lived here. He stayed in a much more modest ranch house in the uptown part of Palm Springs, and this was used mostly for large events. This is the Arthur Elrod house. Sort of the interior designer to the stars, built by Lautner in '68, situated just below Bob Hope's house on Southridge, also with a concrete shell, and was featured in the 1971 James Bond film Diamonds Are Forever. Fred Monhoff, these next few slides are by no means less important than the major architects in Palm Springs, but they just sort of did less projects here. It's hard to explain just how large this project was. You can see the layout on the left-hand side. The complex had luxury bungalows. It just was an elegant building, so ripe for restoration, with these swooping curved glass terrazzo floors. But unfortunately, it was demolished in 2003. And there's a link at the bottom. Maybe, Brian, you can put this in the chat, where you can learn more about some of these places that were destroyed. And there's a lot more information about that there. Herbert Burns, another local architect who did some great work in Palm Springs. The Town and Country was actually the very first place I stayed in Palm Springs in the 80s. Okay, Lloyd Wright, son of Frank Lloyd Wright, built the Oasis Hotel back in '24, so we go way back. Very organic, including having a tree growing through the dining room. The complex went through a lot of expansions and was eventually torn down, except for the tower. So you can see the tower in the left-hand side and in the bottom right. That tower still stands, but nothing else is there. Val Powelson, you'll recognize this because he's on the cover of the book. This is the Moran's house in Rancho Mirage, not actually in Palm Springs. We got a little flack for that, but it was the publisher's decision. I probably did 20 or 30 cover designs, but they thought this was the most dramatic. Victor Gruen, let's see, has one of the more iconic banks in Palm Springs. Rudy Bonfeld was the architect, and it was modeled after the Le Corbusier Chapel in Ronchamp, France. The fountain is no longer there, but the building is currently in the process of being restored, so I'll have to watch for that. Ken Kellogg built a beautiful restaurant, the Chart House in Rancho Mirage. As you can see on the right, unfortunately, it burned and it was deemed too unsafe, and it was eventually demolished. A. Quincy Jones, another master architect, did the Annenberg Estate in Rancho Mirage called Sunnylands. There's so much to say about this, but we're running short. If you can Google this for more information. Let's see, trying to hurry up here. Paul Williams did Lucy Andesi's house in Thunderbird in Rancho Mirage. This is still intact, but it's been remodeled. Paul Williams was important though, because he was the first licensed African-American architect west of the Mississippi, known for designing homes for Hollywood celebrities. And he worked in many different styles, Tudor Revival, French Chateau, Regency, Mediterranean. He also designed or worked on the Town and Country Center in downtown Palm Springs. It's in a little plaza off Palm Canyon Drive with Quincy Jones. And there was a restaurant on the second floor, radio station, KDDS. And this is also currently under restoration, so we'll have to watch what happens there.
Andrew, just before you go on, don't rush it, okay? Because we're going to have there's a big movement afoot here to have part 2 of this.
Oh,
so you have about 5 minutes left, so just take your time, and we'll reschedule towards the end of the year the second half.
Okay. Do you want me to go through and do some of the SCA roadside stuff and say
no? This is SCA stuff. What you're showing, all the restaurants and motels and all that kind of stuff, that's core SCA. So this is a classic SCA presentation.
Let me continue, and I'll save the roadside stuff for later then.
Okay, great.
Okay. Williams also did the Palm Springs Tennis Club with Quincy Jones. You can see the beautiful pool there was said to be the most photographed pool in the country at one point. And this was built around another mountain. Herrera and Luckman was a firm that did Robinson's department store in downtown. Facade had a textured diamond-shaped concrete block and strong horizontal fascia with a bronze finish, and was held up with these thin tapered columns. A very elegant building, and this is still in pretty good shape. Charles Dubois is known for his A-frame style homes in the Vista Las Palmas area of Palm Springs, and they're called Swiss Miss. And they're built by the Alexander Company too. They all have a dramatic roof line which extends all the way to the ground, and there are still 15 remaining. The one on the left with the Thunderbird is not in Palm Springs, it's in Indian Wells, and it's really not considered a Swiss Miss, but it has a very similar asymmetrical roof line. Next one is Claire Earl. I don't know that much about his work. I've always assumed that this was an Alexander, but his firm was Earl and Brock in Glendale. This is located in Twin Palms, also has a stunning facade with this decorative concrete block, and it was restored in 2017. The photo on the left was actually shot at midnight for that midnight book by full moon, so that's why it's dark. Hank Weber did a beautiful house for Jerome Factor, which is the cousin of Max Factor, the cosmetics company. And the unique thing about this house is that the entryway's double door at the bottom was designed to look like compacts, the round makeup containers. And that's still in good shape. James Schuler designed Villa Roma. He designed Villa Roma. This is in Canyon area in 1963, with lots of statuary, marble, and Romanesque architecture and landscaping. A beautiful fountain in the front. The image that I showed you in the front of the New Yorker with all those spreads. I mean, this is shot there, and you can see the same kind of statuary on the right-hand side. I like this place so much that we bought a townhouse there at the same year the book came out, and it just received historic designation in 2022. Hal Levitt did the Morse House, another just amazing home. It's a Class 1 historic site. Originally designed as an Alexander by Palmer and Kreisel, Hal Levitt came in and updated it in the Hollywood glam style. Has terrazzo flooring inside and out. Has a sunken living room, a swim-up bar, and the artist Shag even did a painting of it. You see at the top.
Hey, Alan, if you can, or not Alan, sorry, Andrew, if you can find a good spot to have a break, then we'll consider this to be part one, and we'll save the rest for part two. Is this
Okay.
a good spot, or do you want to? Is there a little section or something you can finish off?
Let me do one more.
Okay.
John Elgin Wolfe did Marrakesh Country Club. This is in Palm Desert. This is a huge complex of 364 houses, very similar to the Hollywood glam style. It's considered more neoclassical or Hollywood Regency. And there's a specific pink color. And every Thursday, these golfers dress color coordinated and put on a putting contest. Maybe that's a fun one to end with.
Yeah, that's a great one to end with. What an amazing presentation. I've never been to Palm Springs, but now that's going to change. I definitely have to go there. This is absolutely fascinating, and not to worry that this was not a SCA themed presentation, because at least half the places were restaurants and motels, and that's core SCA. Now,
Okay.
we've had a bunch of questions,
Okay.
but your colleague Alan's been answering them while you've been talking, so he's
Good.
kind of stealing your thunder a little bit.
Great, great.
But the first one there's two I do want to give to you in the little bit of time we have left. And Barbara Tannenbaum asked the question, when you get to questions, so the trailer of the 1963's Palm Springs weekend, the images, fashions, visuals seem so evocative of the Beach Boys and Gidget. So how did the desert and not the beach get rebranded as the place for youth to be?
Well, it was just, that was where spring break was back then. I mean, I think a lot of people just, thought of Palm Springs as the place to go for spring break. I mean, that's changed. I mean, the police really cracked down on it. There was, obviously a lot of drinking, and the movie shows that as well, if you see the whole thing. So I think it's just a shift from, where things were back in 63 to where they are today. But yeah, it's just a spring break thing.
Okay. And then I was very intrigued by the pictures you showed of the steel houses that were built intending to be affordable housing. First of all, it strikes me as interesting that Palm Springs decided they needed affordable housing. I guess that's for all the service workers. And secondly, very intriguing that was going to be, like, even though it's architecturally designed and really very intriguing, that was going to be a affordable house.
Yeah.
Any comment on that?
Alan, do you know anything more about that?
Well, they were, a lot of those houses were designed for second homes, vacation homes, but they were less expensive. And actually, Palm Springs had a number of innovations in terms of construction, using steel in that case, but other mass-produced efforts, so that Palm Springs could be affordable to the average vacationer. It's not all just big, glamorous houses for movie stars.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Alan, I'm going to wrap this up in about a minute. Did you want to add anything to Andrew's presentation?
Well, there's so much. No, he did a great job. And I hope you realize again, a lot of what he was talking about here, like Hugh Captor, we did not even know who Hugh Captor was when we wrote Palm Springs Weekend. It we're just going into this city and trying to figure it out. There wasn't anything written about it before. But since then, again, there are a number of these architects, which Andrew is included at the end here, that deserve a lot more attention and research.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a good postscript. Well, thank you very much again, Andrew. It was amazing. We may massage the video a little bit to cut out the parts at the beginning where we were experiencing some technical difficulties. So the recording might be hopefully will be a bit cleaner. But once you got into it, oh my goodness, it was amazing, and we had a very good audience. Obviously, quite well versed in modernism as well, which is it's always helpful. And thank you, Alan, for handling the Q&A part while Andrew was speaking. I'd just like to remind everybody about next month, when on Wednesday, June the 12th, at our usual time of 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific, we will join John O'Leary IV, who will tell us about James Melton, who put his collection of cars on display in Hypoluxo, Florida at the James Melton Autorama. The museum featured nearly 100 antique automobiles and period sets, as well as a collection of toys, a giant cyclorama, and the Bernard Thomas America the Beautiful mural, illustrating great moments in American history. Now, SCA members will be receiving the relevant details and registration link through by email, and others can easily register through the SCA website directly. And I'd like to thank our guests for spending some time with us tonight. Expect an email shortly. If you're not already a member, inviting you to join the SCA and enjoy all the benefits of membership. Alan and Andrew, do you have any final words?
Well, I'm sorry about the technical difficulties.
Oh, that's not a problem. That's not your fault. I have them all the time myself. Alan, anything to say?
No, just thanks to everyone for being interested in this, and there's more to come. So do watch out for that.
Yes, we will schedule a part 2, and we'll let everybody that was watched part 1. We will let you know when that's going to be. I would suspect it'll be closer to the end of the year because we have quite a few lined up already, but maybe October, November, December, something for us people up in the north to make us warm watching all the beautiful Palm Springs architecture. So with that, again, I'll thank everyone and especially our presenters for being with us tonight and remind you about the presentation, and we will hope to see everyone in a month's time. Good night.
Night.